So I was inspired by him, and so I decided every day for the next, as long as I could, I was hoping to do it for at least a year, and I was hoping
this kind of performance.
This every day.
Every day.
Yes.
Okay.
And to do it until the end of my PhD. That was the aim.
So, hello, and welcome to this episode of aaimba Conversations. I'm really excited to be here today because I've been knowing Dominique for quite some time now, at least 2 years, I guess.
Or 2 years, since 2016.
Yeah, so it's even more than 2 years, and she's a performance artist, and I'm really excited to talk with her about her uprising, her works, the way, or what inspires her to do it, and of course, to get to know her, to get to know her personality. So, Dominique Baron Bonarjee, welcome to this conversation.
Thank you.
Welcome for having us. Thank you for having us. So,
my pleasure.
The first thing that I really like to ask everybody when I'm talking to about art is like, always the same question. It's like, why? Why you started? What's your passion? And why you decided to go for it?
Yeah, good question. I think that art is often not so much a career as it's a vocation, you know, and because it's difficult to be an artist, it's not something that you can easily earn money from, so you need to have a sort of, see it as some sort of devotion to it, some kind of discipline. I guess that, you know, since I was a kid, I really loved drawing. I was drawing all the time. I was drawing. If there's one thing I can remember, it's that I always wanted to do art.
Okay.
And for me, art was just drawing, or making sense of the world through something that I could make. So I also made costumes. I made objects as well. I liked singing. I liked theatre. So to me, it was like this. What does Wagner call it? Like Gesamtkunstwerk. But then, of course, you know, as I became an adult, and I was still obsessed with this idea of art. Yeah. And so that's why I say, you know, it's a kind of vocation because it's the way that I make sense of the world. Yeah. You know, and so it's developed in lots of different ways.
So would you more describe it as a feeling for you to express yourself, or is it more for you a tool to really get information across, or get to not influence, but also to touch and inspire other people?
Good question. Well, I'm a little bit. I think a lot about this idea of expression and self-expression, and there's a side of me which doesn't. I think that what we want to express is the meaning that we make in the world. So I don't see it as expression of myself. Okay. You know, I see it as turning myself or my existence into a kind of channel for tapping into the world. You know, the greater world. Yeah. So it's more about not expressing myself, but expressing the world through your what eyes. I do.
And how you understand it.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice way. So let us go way back to your childhood days. As you mentioned, you like to draw, you like to paint, you like to do everything. Was there a moment for you where you said, okay, I'm not going to take all these career paths that everybody's recommending me to do, or school is boring, so I need to focus on what I love to do and try to go for it? Was there a moment where you said, okay, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to do it?
There was. Okay. It was not so clear to me. I mean, I think that, you know, when I was at school, I did art class, and it was the only class that I was prepared to stay late to go, even when it was my time off, you know. So we did these big projects of batik. It's like an Indonesian technique for making drawings or images on textiles with wax and dye. So I just spent ages making this batik, you know. It was like more than 2 meters long, it was huge. So, I realized that I had a real passion for it, which I didn't really have for maths and stuff like that.
I think just a few people do for math, I guess.
I had a passion for literature as well. I loved books. But I knew that art was really something that I was just, I was drawn to, and I felt sad if I thought that I wouldn't be able to do it for the rest of my life. So then, I was a bit pushed by my parents to pursue a more, not art.
Okay.
They wanted me to pursue a more serious career.
Because that's the definition everybody gives us. So
totally. And my father's Indian, and I think he comes from a culture where he thought that we needed to have like serious professions and stuff like that. But anyway, I did study economics, and then which is good. It's a very good foundation for figuring out how the world is not right at the moment. But then I started doing theatre. Actually, I got involved in theatre, physical theatre specifically, and I've been remembering recently that I wrote a play, and this play I wrote when I was like 21 or something, and it was about these people who worked in an office, and the guy who was like the caretaker, the lift operator, whatever, he was like a magician. And he could make all their dreams come true. And of course, none of them actually wanted to work in the office. So it was just, when I think back to that, I thought, wow, that was really smart. I mean, I didn't know about offices. I've never worked in an office. But I just knew that I needed to pursue something that was meaningful. So like the dream side of it. So that was funny. But, if I think back on it. And then I sort of decided, okay, I need to kind of work with art in some way, and I was doing illustration and graphic design, and then performances, and slowly getting involved. I was doing more physical theatre, and then I was getting involved in performance art, and then one day I was just like, I don't want to do graphic design and work in advertising, and it's just selling nonsense to people. So I'm just going to take the risk and do it, and then I did it, and my life was. Maybe I didn't earn so much money because in graphic design and advertising you do, but it's a lot more meaningful.
So let's. You say your father is Indian, right? And your mother is also
French.
And it's quite an interesting combination, in my opinion. So tell us something about your upbringing. What was it for you at home? I mean, you said your father wanted you to go to a normal profession, have a job title, and everything like that. So, how did you break out of that cycle? And how did you decide? Did you just break out?
How did I convince my parents that I was right? My parents, I would say, are very eccentric people, and they're great. I think that they are very, the way they met is amazing. Their life together is very wonderful. My dad's written a book about it. It's called The Fairy Tale Romance. So, I think that my parents, for their times, were really breaking boundaries. Having this marriage from people who are from very different worlds, So they definitely brought a lot of different currents into our lives as we were growing up. And I think I told you that I was born in Jersey, and then we lived in various different countries. Lived in the Seychelles for a short time when I was little, and then we lived in Zimbabwe for some time as well. So and then I lived in Japan. So I think that my parents being not attached to one place so much definitely had an impression on me. And I mean, I think that parents make mistakes. So I think that
I guess so.
totally. So I think that the mistake they made was that when I was growing up as an adult, they suddenly felt like they need to stabilize me or something. and sort of like pushing towards something which is stable and secure. And when I said I wanted to be an artist, they were like, no. Artists have these terrible lives and they have no money. And so they wanted us to have an easier life, to have, which is totally understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that I'm like my parents in that I'm more open to taking risks.
Yeah.
So they took risks,
Yeah.
They went against what was normally done in their time. So, I think that now they realize that, I don't need to be an economist or an accountant or something, and that I can live my life and, manage, maybe different from them, but they realize that I'm more like them than they thought.
So when you said that this traveling around, this moving to another place every time, was it a great influence for you, for the work that you do nowadays? And if it was, in which way? In which way would you say it influenced you so much that you somehow also put it into your work?
Yeah, in many ways, it's a huge influence.
Yeah.
I think it's an influence which can be difficult. So, I think that normally the idea that so even, in an artist's biography, you always write, born in this place or whatever. But where I was born is quite meaningless to the whole trajectory that I've had as an artist. So I'm not British, It's not because I was born in Britain that I'm British. I don't feel British at all. And so, it's made it difficult because people want to put you into a box so much, like, oh, you're born in the UK, so you must be British. So, when you read an artist's biography, it's influenced by where that person was born. And that's not the case with me at all. So at the beginning it was, and I know for me, for my brothers as well, it's been really difficult to fit into a world that is so based on your identity as being where you're from. And, that can be, very isolating, or, it can have a negative effect. But slowly I realized, that I don't need to be attached to any of these things.
Is it something that you decided for yourself? I mean, you cannot avoid people telling you that you're British and writing. Whenever they write something about you, they will always write she's a British artist. So is it more a decision? I guess it's more a decision that you took for yourself. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just felt that, if people ask me where I'm from, I say, do you want the long answer or do you want the short answer? And if they say the short answer, I say, okay, I'm Japanese. So really? Of course they're like, no, you're not Japanese. So I say, okay, you want the long answer?
But why you choose Japanese when you lived in so many countries? Is it because you just decided to move there alone by yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. It was like my dad decided to move to Zimbabwe, and I always say to him, Japan is my Zimbabwe.
Okay.
So, I went to Japan. I didn't have any plan to live there, actually. I went on a scholarship, and then I just found many things in the culture that I had an affinity to, that I could relate to, that I could relate to the aesthetics, that I could relate to certain ways of being in the world that I experienced in Japan, which felt much closer to me than what I experienced in the UK, for example, or in France. So my mom is French, I have a French passport, but I felt closer to Japanese people for many reasons, So, but at the same time, I'm critical of many aspects of Japan as well. So that's why it's the long story. The short story makes no sense.
Okay, so let's leave that on the outside. So the other thing that I really love to, or really I'm really interested in asking is, like, you as a performance artist. I mean, I heard that it's very tough to make a living as a performance artist. It's very tough to convince people to actually give a fee for the works that you do. So my question is, how do you survive? Like, I mean, you say you're doing all right, you're doing okay, but how do you get finances and how do you make a living?
Well, you're right. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I think that being a performance artist is probably not something that you can sustain without being regularly funded. You know, having like some organization that you are associated with or something like that, because you don't have anything to sell, basically. The other thing is that I would say I'm more like not doing just performance now. I'm doing definitely sort of cross-disciplinary, like video and sculptures and paintings as well. But all that comes, so you know, you said I'm a performance artist, but I think that everything that I do comes from a very embodied place. So that's why, you know, I do this kind of thing. I'm really, and that's why I said to you, like, the expression is not my expression. I'm trying to find ways, whether it's dancing or drawing or making videos or making sound compositions or whatever, through which I can express this. So it's a little bit bigger, the field in which I work. At the moment, I'm doing a PhD. So, you know, that's kind of sustaining me to a certain extent. And that's wonderful. I'm very grateful about it. I get little commissions here and there. I'm working on a couple of projects at the moment. One is with a Taiwanese artist, so it's a collaboration. So definitely doing collaborations helps things. Doing a PhD has helped things. But otherwise, it's very difficult. Really, really difficult. So,
I can imagine.
Yeah.
But your PhD is something that I wanted to ask you about anyway. So, tell us. We talked about your topic this week, but tell our audience something about it. I mean, what's the inspiration? What's the topic? Why you decided to go for this one instead of another direction?
So my PhD is a very new stream of research through practice. And the stream that I'm doing is 80% practice and 20% theory.
Okay.
So it's really very much about practice.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing here is what I call one of my embodied research methods.
Okay.
So I'm researching through the body.
Yeah.
And I knew from the beginning when I applied that it would very much be based in this idea of embodied research, which is something that I've been doing for quite a long time, so since I went to Japan. And I was very interested in Buto dance in Japan. And Buto is a dance that appeared in Japan after the war and post-war. And it was really a way to make sense of identity, actually, in a way, especially the Japanese identity, which was very affected by the westernization with America and everything. So more than the form of it, I was interested in it as why these artists started to think through their bodies, you know, and try to make sense of this new world that they were living in, westernized world through their bodies. So that was really the foundation for the PhD, was this research that I did in Japan. But then, like the first, you know, I just passed like the midpoint of my PhD. And it was really about doing something that feels so intuitive and so embodied within an institution, an academic institution, which was quite tough, you know, and trying to sort of like put a circle into a square. That's what I felt like I was doing. It was really difficult, you know, because I also thought, you know, I'm in this research institution, I'm doing a doctorate, so I have to take this seriously. And some of my other colleagues in the PhD, we actually were talking about it recently and saying that at the beginning we were like doing performative research, not performance research, we were performing research, like, you know, doing data and doing this and doing that. And it was slowly, you know, that I started to get the courage to actually say what I was really wanting to do with it, which has only happened like this year, really, or just from last year. And So I guess that my topic has been, like I said, about embodied research methods. And I am a practitioner of meditation and lots of spiritual practices that I do. And I am very drawn to these, and I'm sure it's got something to do with my Indian heritage, and because my dad's family is like, they all preachers or politicians, actually. So, which is kind of the same somewhere.
Never know.
And so I decided to be really brave and to bring these spiritual traditions into my work, and through this to question the way that we produce art and the way that art is spectated or put into a public realm. And that my critique in a way is that the sort of logic that so many artists are criticizing, actually, which is the logic of capitalism and this sort of scientific logic that is separated from nature, or this dualistic logic. So that's the way I think about it. The scientific logic is like the observer can observe something and not be involved in it. So if you think of that in the gallery, that the viewer, the spectator, can be separated and just look like impassively at this artwork, and the same in production, that you are making something towards a final product. So because this way of thinking, which I call a disposition towards the world, can be very broad. It could encompass the whole universe. So I needed to focus it, and I decided to focus it on art production and the spectatorship of art as well.
Wow.
Yes.
Amazing. Wow. That's a huge idea. I mean, I'm not going to comment on it because you are currently working on it, right? So I'm very interested to read it one day.
Yeah. I mean,
or to see it. I mean, you said you were doing an 80% practice and 20% theory. So it's going to be more a performance kind of, or I mean, you have to write it down anyway.
I'm going to write. I am writing, of course, but the writing is really supporting what I'm doing in practice. So I'm finding ways to write which are speaking in that same sort of from a place of immersion. I'm part of this, what's called the liquidity cohort, which we're researching through liquidity, and this is actually a practice called liquidity as well. And it's like, how do you stay with the immersion that you don't separate yourself? Because the way that we interact with each other, the way that we interact with things, is often from this place. Well, it's always almost from this place of separation. But if you think of the way that children interact with things, they're often licking them, and, touching them, or they stare at you for hours.
Wow.
Yeah, they don't even blink.
So. Scary, right? Sometimes.
So, I want to think of this way, that it's, even if you think in an art gallery or in a space, not necessarily a gallery, where you come into contact with art, that there's this sort of like judgment that comes, or appraisal, or, this kind of thing. So, I'm wondering, is it possible to be, that art can incite and invoke this kind of attitude that is open, that is curious, that is immersed, that is getting closer and stickier with things.
It's not that huge entity that's hanging on the wall or doing the performance, but everybody's involved and everybody should take part of it.
Well, participates, but there's also this other idea of participation in art, that you make people do things. You go into a gallery and everybody has to start participating and doing stuff. I find this, again, it's kind of just continuing that same logic, which is, it's not subtle, I think that participation can happen on a very almost invisible level. To participate is to be engaged with something.
Yeah.
So if you participate with your heart, it doesn't mean that you need to be sort of jumping up and down about it. You can just change your disposition, and I like to use that word because you can be disposed towards something to be far away from it, or to keep your distance, or you have a disposition of openness. So if the artwork can bring about, or not just the artwork, the space as well in which it is, that it brings about this new engagement between people and things, and objects. I'm really interested in the non-human, not just the human.
Wow. I'm just filtering and grabbing knowledge from you right now. So I think it's time we move on to the next episode, or to the second part of this episode. So we are going to talk about work that we can see here in the back. She's gonna explain it to us a little bit more, and so stay tuned, and we're gonna move on. So, welcome to the second episode of this conversation. So we are going to talk about the work that you saw in the back, and of course she's going to give us some explanation to it, and I'm really excited to get to know the ideas and the inspiration behind it. So Dominique, it's your turn. Maybe you tell us first some insights about it.
Yeah, so this is one of my embodied methods. So I said that I'm researching through embodied methods.
Yeah.
And this method is called liquidity. I started doing it on the 1st of January 2018.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by a Taiwanese artist. His name is Derchin Che. And he was... Derchin Che. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's quite famous for having done these one-year performances. So he would do a performance that would last the entire year. And he did some pretty hardcore performances.
Okay.
Yeah, so like staying in a cage in his studio for a year and being fed by other people. So this is very mild compared to what Derchin Che does.
I need to research him.
Yeah. He's been quite active recently, actually. Okay. And so I was inspired by him, and so I decided that every day for the next, as long as I could, I was hoping to do it for at least a year, and I was hoping
this kind of performance.
This every day.
Every day.
Yes.
Okay.
And to do it until the end of my PhD. That was the aim. And so the idea in it was that every day for at least 5 minutes, I would stop everything that I was doing.
Okay.
And I would go into this position from Tai Chi, which is called Wu Chi, and it's like this. Yeah. And then I would just just see how my body was going to start moving. Okay. So just let go of all my ideas or my thinking. So it was a kind of a standing meditation. Yeah. But at the same time, I also wanted to feel like once I let go of everything, all the tension and all the ideas, like how did my body start to move? And, the head has got a lot to do with the way that we hold ourselves. Yeah. So we hold a lot of tension in our neck. Yeah. And, of course, the sort of like body-mind separation makes, the Cartesian kind of separation is that the head is the important thing and the rest of your body is a sort of brain taxi or something like that. Exactly. It's like, a friend of mine said, my head is, he said to me, I thought my body was just a vehicle for carrying my head around. It's like the brain taxi. So, it was a way to have a break from this overthinking, like especially when I just started my PhD, this anxiety about the research and everything. So it was really sort of a way to snap out of all of that. Okay. And then I started using EEG. So I did this whole project, which was called What Do We Know About Free Time?
EEG is the thing that you have on your...
Yes. Yeah. This is a commercial EEG that is used in meditation, actually. And so just after I had started this liquidity method, I then started thinking about how you could measure these states, because of course, again, I was thinking of this sort of like the scientific logic that I've told you, which is about measuring things and data and all this kind of stuff. So then I did this project which was called "What Do We Know About Free Time?" And I mean, what do we know about free time? So often people say, "Oh, my free time is when I go running," but is that really free time?
It's not a form of work or staying busy. It's not a form of staying busy.
Totally, or filling time. So it's got a lot to do with the time part. What is free time? So then I got all these wearables like EEGs, and I've also got a Fitbit on my wrist that you can see there. So I was doing this liquidity method, and actually I started doing it for more than 5 minutes. So sometimes I was doing at least 7 minutes, but sometimes I would do like 40 minutes or something. And it would really change my brain state, because now I was measuring with the EEGs. And when you go into what's called a flow state, or they don't call it a flow state with that EEG, but they call it calm state or something. So there's an algorithm that puts together all your different brain waves, and it's saying like, now you're active, now you're neutral, now you're calm. And when you go into a calm state, you hear birds. Maybe you can hear some birds in the video. But there were quite a lot of birds playing when I did this. So, it was really giving me an insight into how this algorithm was reading my brain patterns and what was actually happening to my brain patterns as well. So, although, my critique is of the scientific logic, this was a kind of prosthesis to allow me to get an insight into how I was entrained to that logic as well, in terms of like, I have to be busy, I have to produce, I have to do research.
Work.
Exactly. So that's what I was doing in this video, and this was actually filmed at the Floating University in Berlin, which was over the summer of 2018. And
so it's still here, or it's gone?
It's gone. It was a temporary project. It was beautiful. Really an amazing project. I can see it.
I don't feel like it's in Germany anyway. Somehow. But it looks beautiful. So you say this project was more a thing for you to calm down, or to not calm down, but also to reinvent yourself somehow. Is it? Am I getting it right, or is it?
Let's say that if you give it a technical term, it was neural self-regulation. Regulating my nerves from being like in this sort of like productive state all the time, which is quite anxiety-inducing, especially being in the university and everything. So in a way, I was trying to look for a movement which was a dance. I call this a dance that would really allow me to experience some freedom from what I was thinking, what was going on, all my the inner critic and stuff like that. So this dance, again, it didn't have a form. I was not looking for a kind of beauty or some expression. I'm not telling you how I feel. I'm not telling you a story. It was just that I wanted to see what would happen to my body if I just allowed all the tension to come out of it. But of course, I didn't want to fall down either. That's another one of my methods called collapse. But so, it was kind of trusting that my body would find ways to sort of pick itself up without me having to consciously do it. So that's kind of what I was observing in a very meditative way,
But the question that I have is, when you say you don't, you say you didn't want to do it without you consciously knowing that you're doing it, but you also use these tech items to measure your behavior and the way you feel, or at which stage you are. So isn't that somehow also a work preparation for yourself to be forced in a way to always look, or not always, but to look at the watch. Okay, at which state where am I in right now? Am I already in that stage of calm? Isn't it something that you can actually feel for yourself when you're inside that you know, okay, I've reached a stage where I can say I'm balanced or in between?
It's a good question. Very good question. Totally. I mean, in a way, I was doing it with a very sort of double-sided attitude towards it, you know, because I don't need to meditate with a headband on. I really don't need to do it. I don't need to wear a headband or a Fitbit to tell me how well I'm doing, you know, but this kind of culture, this kind of, you know, way of measuring ourselves is pervasive in our society, you know, whether we are using Facebook and, you know, social media with likes, you know, that's a measure of how many people like what you're doing or something. So, you know, even in academia as well, there's all these sort of benchmarks that are proof. So, you know, this whole culture of having to prove things through numerics, through data. So I wanted to engage with that, you know, because of course I could go and dance in this beautiful place and then make a beautiful video about it, and, you know, that's a nice aesthetic piece. But at the same time, I wanted to bring in this whole culture of numerics and data in a critical way, because, you know, when I got this, my idea was not to become the best meditator in the world. It was to see, like, what's actually going on when I'm doing this, and how does this affect what I'm actually doing. So in a way, the EEG became like a witness. You know, it was like when I'm in my studio or my expanded studio, because I call this my expanded studio.
The word is your expanded studio.
Totally, the word. And you know, when I'm in that state of mind that I'm thinking of producing an artwork, like, how am I going about that? You know, how much of me is in a state of, you know, overthinking or being critical of what I'm doing before I've even given myself a chance to go into a space where I don't know. And I think that not knowing is really important to the whole artistic process. But, you know, you asked me that question earlier about being a performance artist and how difficult it is to survive. You know, this kind of worry is with you all the time, you know. So obviously, you know, as you go about doing work as an artist, you can't ignore the fact that there are these voices saying, you know, is this good, is this bad, and they like it, is this like good, you know, in line with what is trendy at the moment or whatever. So it was really to address these voices, you know, that I know are there, and I think everybody experiences that, you know, it's like, can I pick them up with this? You know, and at the same time, it did give me feedback. It gave me feedback about what was going on as I was going about this. So yeah, it's definitely like a bit of both. Like to say there's a critique of the numerics, but I'm also a subject of them. I also am completely, you know, subjected to this data, and it's become part of the way I think myself.
Also, everybody, I guess, now. I mean, with the social media and everything, everybody's measuring themselves. Yeah. Nice. I mean, I feel like I could talk with you because you're giving so much information, and it's so interesting to get to know the concepts behind your work, to the concept behind your thoughts in general. So, but let's stop here and then go on. And you told me that you were working on another performance right now. You're just practicing. So let's go on and talk about that. Just for a second. So here we go. This is the current project that you're working on, right? And so I don't know anything about it, so you have to tell us something about it.
Okay. So this was just a rehearsal that I did during lockdown. I was very lucky because I'm a member of the studio in London, which is called Chisholm Hill. It's artist-led space. They've got a beautiful studio. And they let me use the studio for a day. So, you know, when I was telling you about liquidity, the previous video that I showed, I was telling you that it was based on the first movement was from a Tai Chi position, Wu Chi. And now I've been practicing Tai Chi for a year, more than a year actually, because I was practicing it in Berlin as well. But I started doing these Tai Chi motions and creating a sort of movement phrase with the feeling of the movement of Tai Chi. So Tai Chi is also called dry land swimming.
Okay.
And the idea in the dry land swimming is that as you move, you feel like the viscosity of the air around you. So that it's as if you were in water. You know, in water you can't easily just move your hand or something like that. So it's to sort of bring attention to the way that you're being supported by the air, by all these sort of invisible energies, which is the chi. Chi is the energy. So I've been watching these free diving videos, and my question was, could I be free diving on land? And this is what I'm trying to achieve through this movement, which is to really bring attention to, how the air is supporting us, so that it comes alive, that, the elements or the entities around us are part of the way that we move. And so I think of it as a movement that is very, it's not so much slow as in that it's aware of many other movers around me. I'm not the only mover. There's like movers in the space here, and this is my ambition, is to swim on dry land, I think.
Well, the question that comes to my mind is, you said something about slow movement.
Yes.
But I imagine that you can feel the energy around you even more. For example, when you are on your bike. When I'm on my bike and riding through the city, I can sometimes feel the wind, feel the rain when it's raining. It's a different type of energy that I feel, or that I'm exposed to when I'm on the bike. So why did you decide to, or what's the idea behind moving so slow instead of moving fast? Because you could also move fast and feel the energy maybe a bit more on you, and you can also move slow and feel the energy. So why? You know what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah. What, like?
Yeah.
I guess I'm taking more the dynamic of Tai Chi.
Okay.
And Tai Chi is really about connecting with this support that is within the air.
Yeah.
So of course, if you're moving fast, the air has maybe a resistance, but you are aerodynamic. You're moving through it in some way. Yeah. So there's this aerodynamics, and actually this I call it more like hydrodynamics, like water dynamics or hydraulics or something like that. And but what I feel is that it's putting me in touch with the way that water moves in my body. Okay, so we're like 60 to 70% water inside our bodies, and through this kind of movement that I'm researching, I really want to get to a place of connection with the water in my body and how my water moves. So, often if I think of movement, a movement that is efficient, that it has to be, so I did a lot of research into efficient movement that was, there was this whole research called motion study. Motion and, what was the other one? Well, the motion study I researched, and it was these observations that were made of workers from about 1910 until 1925. And it was to see how workers could be more efficient, so cut out any useless movement. So, if you've got to like chop a piece of wood, that you only do this, and you don't you don't take it too far or you don't take it too close and you don't go to the side, so it's the most efficient way of doing movement. And then I think that this kind of way of thinking, of course, this was part of the sort of industrial, the move to a sort of industrialized age of machines. So it's almost making the body into a kind of machine. Okay? And I think that this has been transferred into the way that we think of like our keyboards and the efficiency that we need, or even the way that we tap our keyboards and everything. And everybody's getting pains in their bodies from this. So, it's like, but how, like, what kind of movement would we be doing if we were more in touch with the fluid motion of water? Because water is not something that moves in these direct ways. Water moves in all kinds of ways. So I guess that through this, and because Tai Chi is called this dry land swimming, I'm trying to connect to a way, a dynamic, which is much more, call it languid sometimes, undulating, that's moving these kinds of directions. It's not linear. And measure or the data I've been talking, it's got a very linear logic. So through my body, I want to find more wavy logic.
So I still want to challenge you a bit on this because
sure.
The thing is, water is the most perfect element on this planet, but I also somehow feel like water is also always a victim of the environment that it is in. Because if it's raining, it has to fall down. There's no other option for water to fall down after when it starts raining. Of course, it's going on a cycle or a circle, and also when it's in the river, it's always going the easiest way. So if humans, for example, build a dam, build a wall, and it's gonna be stopped. So my question is like, water is of course the most easiest, goes the most easiest way, but you also have this opposite of water, like being a victim of the environment that you're in somehow, not really a victim in the sense of not being able to move anywhere, but a victim in the sense of you have to adapt. I mean, if water is in the glass, it adapts to it becomes the glass. If water is on the floor, it will spread out in any kind of way. So is this a part of this performance too, or is it just the one-sided view of the being water?
I mean, I like that Bruce Lee thing.
You
like water.
You like water. You water, my friend.
Of course, I think that there's, in terms of the way that I personally, have needed to adapt a lot, that I feel that I need to adapt all the time to different situations that I'm in, because, like I said to you before, I'm not attached to some sort of like identity or country. So I'm a bit like water, I'm kind of fluidly moving around. And that adaptation that I have to do can be, like I said, can be unpleasant, but I've actually turned it into a practice in a way that is pleasant. So, I do think of the different aspects of it. I remember writing a piece for something that, a walk that I did through Berlin, a long walk, and thinking of, how water gets under walls. So you can build walls, but water will still get through the walls.
Yeah, of course, it's true.
Yeah.
But during time it will still go through. So nice. So is this performance where is it going to take place?
So this was just me still working on it. I'm making a film next week in Berlin.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. And I'm going to be exploring it more in the forest. Okay. And through that movement, I kind of went to immerse. I talked a lot about immersion. I want to immerse myself into the dynamic of the forest, so that I don't stand out as the human, but I become part of the forest.
Yeah.
So that's my aim through this movement is,
Right.
you know, and I really am keen to find these dynamics and these rhythms that are in tune with natural processes.
Right.
So the weather or the growth of trees and plants and things like that. And yeah, that somehow it's not that, you know, I'm glorifying nature, like amazing nature, but it's just that I find it almost like a way to subvert this human specialness. Like, I don't want to make things according to a rhythm that's being dictated just for humans. Why don't I, you know, I was joking with some of my friends, but I said that, you know, I want to wash the dishes as if I were a plant, or like hula dancing. As I, you know, why should I quickly wash the dishes, put them there? So, you know, that kind of thing.
Beautiful. So we need to come to an end here. It was amazing talking to you, Dominique. Thank you very much for helping us, for giving us these insights. I feel like I'm connected again, and also filled with lots of inspiration.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and I hope we're going to see you to the next episode. And have a nice day. Bye bye. Dominique Banerjee. Well, Baron Bonarjee. That's how they call it, right?
Baron Bonarjee.
Baron Bonarjee. You always got those with their names, but sorry. So please see you next time. Bye bye.